guys, it's Ashley, and the Booktubeathon for 2016 has officially ended as of like 10.5 hours ago. I managed to read 6 out of 7 books, which is not too shabby considering that I pretty much only read when I was off work and on the very last day of the Booktubeathon on Sunday, so all things considered, I'm pretty happy with how much I was able to read. I had a lot of fun. It got me way ahead on my reading goal challenge. I'm now like 9 books ahead for my reading schedule according to Goodreads. And I read a lot of pretty good stuff, so I'm gonna spend this video talking about what I read for the Booktubeathon and what I thought about what I read, so here we go. The first book I read was Vengeance Road by Erin Bowman. This satisfied 2 challenges. One was a book with yellow in the cover, and the other was a book that you heard about from Booktube. And I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I very much enjoyed it. I went into it just knowing that the cover was beautiful and the premise sounded interesting. It's a YA Western, and just based on its bare, bones premise from the inside flap, I knew that I wanted this book and I wanted more YA Westerns, and after having read this, I can still say that I want more YA Westerns. This was so cool. There's like this new outlet of Western. It's young adult, and it makes it a lot more accessible to me and a lot less eye-roll worthy because there's not quite so many cliches in it. It tells the story of Kate, whose father has been killed by a band of outlaw gangs called the Rose Riders, and so she is out for vengeance to get all of the members of that gang, and while she is traveling to kill them all, she meets up with Jesse and Will, who are some family friends, and they help her track down the Rose Riders, who are on a quest for gold. And this was really amazing. It had everything I expected out of a Western. The dialect itself was Western style, a lot of y'alls and draws and apostrophes everywhere, so it took a little while to get into. I wasn't expecting it to be written in a dialect. Once I knew that that's how it was going to be written, I got used to it, got comfortable with it, and really enjoyed it. I really liked Kate. She was a great heroine. She had her mind fully set on her goals. She was really mature. She's, I think, 18 in this book, and she really shows her maturity. She's not just like some love-struck teeny bopper. She's hardened, in life by all her struggles and stuff. This is really great. It had a great premise. It had great writing. I blew through it. I couldn't wait to read it when I wasn't reading it while I was at work. I was just thinking about this book and thinking about finishing it, and I honestly have nothing bad to say about it. Everybody needs to read this book. It's just, it's so great. It's unlike anything you'll read, and it's a breath of fresh air. Truly and honestly. Next, I read all 3 volumes of The Rat Queens that are out right now, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and I gave these 4, 3, and 3 stars respectively, so the highest star rating I gave was for the first one. And my least favorite of the series was definitely the third one, mostly because the coloring and the drawing style changed pretty dramatically. Like in this third one, they start having thicker lines and they start to look a lot more cartoony, a lot more colored, a lot more like shading and highlighting. Whereas in the first volume, and in the second one too, they're more penciled. They have thinner lines, they look like they're drawn or color penciled in, and it's a lot flatter, and I just like that style a lot better for this story. So that was one reason why my rating started decreasing as I read through the series. Also, I felt like it started out with a huge bang with these really interesting characters who all are complete badasses, not ruled by like love or anything like that. They just are out for blood, and they're just being queens. Just all around are being queens and not taking shit from anybody, and that's how it starts out. Second book, it kind of stays that way. We also get a little bit of backstory for each of them. They all start to have sort of their own storyline, and we get to know each of them individually, so that was nice, but it kind of didn't leave me as astounded as the first one. And then the third volume was just a complete letdown. It was a wasted opportunity. We got time to really learn each girl's individual history and learn more about them, but they ended up, it seemed like, not acting like themselves and not looking like themselves. And while it did end in a cliffhanger, it felt like a really forced cliffhanger to make more volumes. I just didn't believe in it. All of the interesting stuff as far as building the universe, it kind of fell flat because I spent most of the book confused. It would tell me some new things about the universe, give me new names, give me new backstories, new places, but it would give it to me at really odd times. It would just like drop this new thing and then move on, and then we wouldn't hear about it ever again. And it just left me confused rather than intrigued. So it was very disappointing once I got to the end. But the first one, like I said, was just absolutely fantastic, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So a really great beginning, but kind of a really unfortunate ending in my opinion. Next I read The Maze Runner by James Dashner, and I also watched the movie The Maze Runner, and this was for the challenge to read and watch a book and movie adaptation that you haven't read and watched before. It's really hard for me to find one. This was one of the only ones I could find that I already owned the book of and hadn't seen the movie of, so this was like slim pickings. This is one of the only ones. I have to say, I think that while I really loved this story, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Really interesting, really mysterious, kind of a lack of love in this story, which is really nice. I really liked the idea of the story and the story that was being told. I did not like the writing style at all. It was really hard to get into. I don't think I started actually enjoying my reading time while reading this book until like page 125. It was just really disappointing because I was expecting it to be this crazy, amazing book that I just couldn't put down, but unfortunately, the writing style is just so weird because it gets really choppy in places, and I feel like the author, James Dashner, takes a long time to get anywhere and to actually explain anything to you, and it just was a very weird writing style. I feel like he didn't quite know how to voice Thomas. Like, he had this great story idea, but didn't quite know how to use Thomas's voice to tell it. I really actually enjoyed the movie better than the book because it had all the elements of the story and the plot and the characters and the action without having the like disjointed writing style and the writing style I couldn't connect with. So it had all the good parts that I liked, minus the writing. So I really enjoyed the movie better than the book, actually. I will say though that this book made me absolutely fall in love with Newt. He is one of my favorite characters now. He is just an absolutely great human, and I really like him. I find no fault in him, honestly. So I love Newt. I loved the actor who played Newt in the movie, and I thought they did a really great job casting him and everybody else. So 3 out of 5 stars for this one. And the last book I read, which I don't have a copy of, I left it at work, is Agnes Gray by Anne Bronte. Originally I was going to read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, but I kind of fell behind on my reading schedule, but I still wanted to read an Anne Bronte because I'd never read a book by her before. I decided to pick that one up since it's significantly smaller. It was about 142 pages altogether, so that I could fulfill the challenge of reading a book that's older than you with Anne Bronte, and I was able to finish it. Agnes Gray is the story of this governess. It's loosely based on Anne Bronte's actual life, and she basically decides to be a governess in order to sort of help out her family, but also just so that she can kind of have her own identity because she's kind of been coddled by her family her whole life. And so she decides to become a governess, but it doesn't go really well. She ends up being very lonely, very estranged from everybody, and kind of cast away. And so she finds her way through that, keeps her really dry sense of humor and her sort of high hopes for herself, and tries to come out of everything, you know, better in the end. It was a really great story. I liked Anne Bronte's writing style. It was a lot drier and a lot more realistic than her sisters, Emily and Charlotte. It had less descriptions and was less colorful, but it was very to the point, and it kind of made it easier to read because it wasn't sort of like scatterbrained, and the language and word choices that she had were exactly the word choices she wanted to use, and so I didn't feel like I was kind of getting lost in the story or confused in any way by the language itself. And so that was really nice, and it was a really quick read. Like I said, it was really short. I was worried that because it was a classic, and I haven't read a classic in a couple months, I was gonna kind of have some struggles with it, but it wasn't. It was a really great read, and I'm really glad I read it. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. And that's it. Those are the books that I read for the Booktubeathon. Let me know what you guys read for the Booktubeathon, if you participated in it, and if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, let me know what you thought of those as well in the comment section below. And please subscribe if you want to see more videos, and like if you liked this video, and I will see you guys next time. Happy reading!